I'm guessing I was more unconsciously aware of sound when I was younger, and then as I got older, I became more conscious of it. We can hear birds, wind in the trees, dogs barking. I was an adolescent, and we lived on the edge of the suburbs, so I'd like to go exploring in the woods nearby, and there were farms and fields, and you'd find a drainage pipe, you know, one of those concrete pipes that goes through a culvert, and you go, what a weird sound it is in here. At one point, I remember following a stream or creek, and it went under a very low railroad bridge. So I was crouching, going through this thing, and a train came over. It completely scared me out of my wits. It was the loudest thing I'd ever experienced. The sound of the train was kind of vibrating. It might have been the fact that the sound was in this kind of semi-enclosed place that in some ways amplified it or made it more terrifying. It was totally frightening. I think I fell on the ground and put my hands over my ears and then crawled out on my hands and knees as fast as I could. Yeah, and that was my first experience of being completely overwhelmed and terrified by sound.
So we're just setting up a 14-channel EEG device, which measures the electrical activity of the brain using sensors on the scalp.
So whenever we approach these real-world studies, we always try and think about the participant experience, because we want to reflect the real-world responses that people are having, the sound of spaces and environments.
We're going to be playing sounds, and we're hooking up the brain data to a visualization of emotional experience. We can see if someone is, excited and positive and happy, joyful, or perhaps someone is negative, feeling anxiety and fear, using a quite beautiful visualization, but that's color-coded based on these different emotional states. These technologies that will be more embedded into our daily lives in the future will allow us to learn more about how we each respond to sound. So, Tim, you're gonna play the sound.
Sound, it's so inherently primal. The first sound that we ever hear is our mother's heartbeat. We feel sound with our whole entire being.
We evolved from groups of people that lived either in plains or grasslands where the sound was very different than what it is here in New York. People would be more attuned to very specific sounds that would either mean food or you're going to be eaten.
That sudden loud sound is a signal of a potential threat. We need to respond quickly to that, and we evolved the capabilities to do that.
Early humans gravitated to places where the sound was really different. Caves. Caves have a completely different sonic space than the forest or wherever else they would be. They might be very silent or they might be very echoey. But it was an extraordinary place, not an ordinary place. Early humans communicated using vocalizations in the same kind of semi-sophisticated way that we're discovering animals do now. Given that humans had free hands, they didn't have to walk on them, they could start to produce sound with bowls or sticks or little flutes.
Then we evolved to have language and speech and communicate with one another.
One of the earliest ways that we started to use sound more creatively is through kind of rhythmic drumming.
Who's to say that these primal sounds weren't the original form of music? We've just become more complex species and have learned to actually make more dynamic tones and rhythms and interplays.
After the Industrial Revolution, we have the sounds of cars, horns, construction.
We have been bombarded with a cacophony of new sounds.
We also now have these technologies that are inseparable from us, sending us notifications designed to pierce through our other senses.
Oh my God.
That urban, unnatural, loud sound that is unpleasant definitely had a strong response. There is this kind of red here, which is associated with anxiety, fear, disgust, that's consistently present.
On my way over the bridge to Brooklyn the other day, I was on the Manhattan Bridge. The subways were so loud, I put my finger in one ear. It was painful. I mean, that's not good for us.
When a loud sound occurs, there's a cascade of events that happen inside our brains. Our response is actually automatic. It doesn't go through our cortex, our thinking part of the brain. It uses our brainstem. And that's because it needs to be very fast to alert us to what may be going on.
I think in the last century, people have been aware of sonic pollution, sound covering up our awareness of the world around us. The phenomena of the natural world being blocked out is a new thing.
So in the pandemic, it was a really interesting time. One of the experiences I think that we felt on a global level, especially within cities, is this returning to the natural sounds around us.
I remember some of us just stopping, like on 6th Avenue, and going, listen to that. You could hear all these birds all around you. There's no traffic. It was kind of amazing. It was like, oh, you take that out, and this is still there. The birds are still there.
We spend up to 90% of our times in a built environment. And if you just take that number, it's a pretty startling number. We never turn our hearing off. We are always listening 360 degrees, 24/7.
Even with kind of double pane windows, I must sleep through sirens and cars honking and everything like that.
A lot of us live in a state of disconnection. We have our earphones in our ears all of the time. We've lost our ability to listen and connect to our spaces. So I think one of the best things that people can do is just start to be a little bit more attuned with your surroundings.
Hearing and listening are very different things.
Hearing, I think of as just sound coming in.
Listening is a choice, and it requires our focus.
We're paying attention. The way that our brain does this is actually in the front parts, in our prefrontal cortex, our executive control system. And a big job of this is to allocate attention, even though we get quite good at ignoring certain sounds, right? Because there's so many around us. It's hard work to selectively pay attention, and that can really wear us out.
Isn't the sound of the forest incredible? You have the rustling of the trees, you have maybe streams of water. I think it's important for us to all recognize the spaces that we feel good in so that we can begin to design and attune to our environments to support our health and well-being.
There are sounds in music that can help us process our emotions by giving us that kind of shared experience with others, but also that shared movement can be a very powerful bonding experience.
In the concert world, it's not just volume, but we're used to sound having more of a physical impact. At the bass, you can feel it it can have a profound emotional effect in some ways. Sound editors have discovered in films it can be kind of surprising or terrifying. You hear something off screen that you don't see in the scene that emotionally tells you what's going on. It's kind of remarkable how much we can orient ourselves based on sound. With your eyes closed, you can tell what kind of space you're in, what kind of room you're in, what kind of landscape you're in.
The way that we orient sound and know where it's coming from is really quite interesting, and it's because we have two ears. Sound coming from, let's say, my right side here is going to hit my right ear a little bit before it hits my left ear. And so our brain does some really awesome math to calculate which direction the sound is coming from based on the timing of when it hits each ear.
When I'm riding my bike in a city, I take my earbuds out. I know that I'm getting all these clues if something's coming from the side or behind me, and if I wasn't aware of them, it could be dangerous. Yeah, so I keep my ears open. I feel safer.
Sound is this ineffable feeling that you often can't put words to.
I think when you go into large echoey spaces, whether it's a cathedral or a large temple or whatever, you can immediately sense that's the kind of space you're in. But the question is, what does that make you feel?
We think about the acoustic atmosphere and the acoustic treatment of our spaces, how buildings are designed now. The way that an architect might design for the visual sense actually hinders the acoustic environment in that space.
And in some ways, it makes you feel small and insignificant. You're just a little tiny bug in a big space. But in other ways, surrendering to that sense of insignificance can be a pleasurable experience too.
So we just played some audio from the interior of a large cavernous space. And now we can take a look at the brain data. I did notice much more kind of this content, relaxed state, quite consistent and steady and positive.
And so if you think about spaces that we feel good in, you can think about these sacred spaces that when you walk in, perhaps you just want to go silent. An anechoic chamber is perhaps the quietest place on Earth. And when you go there, you expect to hear nothing.
I think it's the John Cage story where he was hoping to experience absolute silence in an anechoic chamber. And when he got in there, he realized, oh no, I can still hear things. And they said, oh, that's your heart beating, or that's your nervous system, that high whine that you hear. So he realized, oh, we never experience silence, ever.
We're used to a certain kind of sensory environment, and when that gets changed, our brain can't predict well what's going to happen. We didn't evolve in anechoic chambers, right? So being inside one feels really strange.
There's a huge sound wave happening in the world right now. We have more insight and awareness and knowledge and understanding about sound and how we hear than ever before. That has also been met with huge technological advances, propelling the quality in which we can hear and listen.
Live music's a social experience, probably more than it is a musical experience. There's composers who've made recordings or performances a kind of world that you can step into, immersing yourself in all sorts of ways.
There's so much going on, all the new technologies for immersive and spatial sound, the new ways that sound and music can be created.
It's incredible what's emerging right now. And there's a huge community around this kind of art of sound and the future of technology in these spaces. You know, the Future of Sound just had their 5-year anniversary. Then you have artists like Lachlan Turchin visualizing the intimate interaction of sound waves in water, for example. And there's Chromasonic, who is blending sound and light frequencies together to give you these really enriching and meditative experiences.
What's exciting is, we have created and designed sound and audio technologies that can help us have these really powerful and positive sonic experiences. Sound will become much more personalized. We can learn what does relax us the most effectively, to reduce our stress, what does energize us.
There is a sense of coming back to home that everybody is looking for now, coming back to yourself. And now is this incredible moment where we can really galvanize change, demanding more spaces that are good for our human health.
I've seen a couple of pretty sizable ambient works. I thought, this is like experiencing weather when a thundercloud comes in and you see it coming in the distance and you can feel the air changing. But it's happening very slowly, little by little, but the changes are quite profound. This is a very different way of perceiving sound. I'm sure people have said being in those environments is really therapeutic. I feel that as well, but I also ask myself, why? Why is it because it's taking us back to where we came from? Like, oh, this is my deep, deep self, deep, as a human. Or is it just taking away all these intrusive sounds for a moment?